Disclaimer. This podcast features a conversation between two individuals regarding assistive technology. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed during this episode belong solely to the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of their respective employers. Furthermore, this discussion is for informational purposes only.
Hi, welcome to Assistive Tech Today podcast. I'm your host, Vinny Lavodi, and today we have a special guest with us. We have Ignacio Montoya. He is a biomedical engineer, and he is with Georgia Tech, and he's here to talk to us today about some very interesting tech that he's working with. So, without further ado, Ignacio, welcome to the podcast. And also, I want to say he's a military veteran, and we thank you for your service. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Vinny. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to be in the Assistive Tech Today podcast. And I'm happy to be here to share some of the really impactful translational work that I'm involved with, and what I've been doing ever since these last 13 years, ever since sustaining a spinal cord injury and multiple traumatic neurological injuries that have led me to this journey.
Right. So, yeah, I've been following you on LinkedIn, and you had some pretty cool posts. So I was saying earlier, I've been following you on LinkedIn, and you guys have had some really cool posts with that I would call it an ectoskeleton that you guys were working on. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
exoskeleton.
So is it, what got you into, working on that? I mean, obviously for your own personal injury, you were a biomechanical engineer already. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to give us kind of a rundown of, how things progressed and how you got to working in this field.
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, before this, Vinny, 13 years ago, I was at Georgia Tech completing Air Force ROTC. I was dually enrolled at Georgia State University, getting a bachelor's degree in business administration, but mainly focusing on my career as a pilot. I had done well in ROTC. I had just commissioned as a second lieutenant, an officer, and I had gotten the selection for a rated pilot slot in order to go to undergraduate pilot training. And at the same time, I was a member of the Yellow Jacket Flying Club, this flying club of Georgia Tech students, where I could work on getting my private pilot's license before going into undergraduate pilot training in order to speed the process up and be able to go directly into undergraduate pilot training and not the first 90 days of initial flight screening in Colorado Springs. So that I was well on track to completing that. Like I said, I was already selected as a pilot. I was commissioned, but I was in the transition window between commissioning and beginning your first active duty assignment, which was undergraduate pilot training. And one evening in uniform, coming from a service-connected military training event, I was on my motorcycle, 700 feet from turning into my neighborhood after riding on the highway for about 30 minutes, no issues, but 700 feet from turning into my neighborhood, just the traffic light before, I had a green light and someone was making a left turn into the shopping center that was to my right, and they just failed to yield, and they just made that left turn right in front of me, not giving me a chance to even brake. And I literally came to a stop with my body plummeting against this side of this minivan, and resulting in a multitude of neurological injuries that are considered a trifecta of the worst of the worst. A complete spinal cord injury, at the chest level, T4, T5, a peripheral nerve injury of my right arm called the brachial plexus avulsion, where 3 of the main 5 nerves of the upper extremity were ripped from the spinal cord, from the root where they connect to the spinal cord. So there's no way to reattach them currently in medicine. So that's the most severe type of brachial plexus injury that you can sustain. And on top of those 2 injuries, a traumatic brain injury. I suffered a left frontal contusion. As you can imagine, 45 miles an hour coming to a complete stop with a minivan. Even though I had an amazing helmet, it's still, I
Can
still
only do so much.
exactly. So, it resulted in me being in a coma for 3 months, in ICU for 31 days before they could even do my spinal cord injury surgery, the fusion and the instrumentation to stabilize my back. But the injury, the spinal cord itself, never received any type of treatment because in medicine we just do not know how to treat a spinal cord injury at a neurological level. And anyways, I woke up from this coma. I was told that I was so blessed to be at one of the top 10 rehabilitation hospitals in the US, if not the world. Shepherd Center is this hospital in Atlanta, is one of the best. And I was supposed to feel really blessed to be there. And I was. Um, However, I woke up from this coma, and thank God I was cognitively aware of my surroundings and this and that. And I was still in that fighter pilot mentality of observe, orient, decide, and act. Let's overcome any scenario. I had trained as an officer for 4 years. I was ready to go to war, need be, and lead men and women into battle. So with that same type of mentality, I approached this catastrophic situation. And I said, okay, let's see what's available to me in this top 10 rehabilitation hospital in the world. I'd see amazing technologies and devices in the PT gym, locomotor training, treadmills, functional electrical stimulation, bicycles, where you put electrodes on your lower extremities and you can cycle while being receiving that electrical stimulation
Simulation.
that's synchronized with the movement. I saw all these a standing frame where you can at least just bear some weight. And I would ask, when am I going to get a chance to get on that and on that and on this and that? And I was told from the very beginning, your injury is considered a complete. Naively, I was like, well, thank God I'm complete. I'm not incomplete. Incomplete makes it sound like I'm missing a limb or something.
Mm.
Come to find out that complete just means that that's the most severe type
So
of injury, meaning you have no sensation, no movement, and no functioning below the level of injury. So here I am coming to this realization. So I have the most severe injury, and they tell me, well, um, your insurance will not reimburse for therapy, will not cover for therapy, and we do not provide therapy for anyone with a complete injury because it has not been proven that that's going to bring about any substantial, significant, meaningful
change.
progress in your neurorehabilitation. So because of that, and because of the resources and the staff, we focus most of the training on incomplete injuries, those who have some signs of being able to wiggle a toe, have some movement below the injury, or some sensation below the level of injury. So I was like, okay, so how can I go from complete to incomplete so I can come back and take advantage of your protocols and your paradigms and your research and your neurorehabilitation? And everyone just shrugged their shoulders and said, well, just go home. Within 2 years, normally after all the swelling from the trauma goes down in the spinal cord, if you are going to get anything back, you'll get it back within those first 2 years after the swelling goes down. If not, then there's nothing we can do. But if you do get some return of function, of mobility, sensation, within those 2 years, you can come back and get reassessed. And my question was, well, what do I do for 2 years?
Right.
sitting in a wheelchair looking at my four walls in an apartment somewhere that's not even accessible.
Yeah.
What do I do with my life while I see that my body is deteriorating, my muscles are atrophying, I'm getting contractures, I'm from not moving. Because, I quickly found out that the wheelchair is a great piece of technology to give you access in the short term. But for something that's long term, the wheelchair does not promote any type of neurorehabilitation, any type of neuroplasticity, any type of neurorecovery. So the the dream of being able to get any function back gets further and further away the longer you sit in a wheelchair, and you see all of your physiological systems one by one break down. Everything from your metabolic rate, um, which translates to your ability to thermoregulation, your ability to regulate your body temperature, all of that sensation wise, and just your normal cardiorespiratory function, all of that one by one just starts to get deteriorated. And I then got a pressure sore right in my coccyx, my tailbone. I'd lost 50 pounds in a coma for 3 months. So I was skin and bone when I woke up from that coma. And I wasn't being turned in bed adequately in this top 10 rehabilitation center. So when I come to this realization, I see I have a pressure sore. I see that my physical therapy sessions would consist of therapists sitting me at the edge of a mat and telling me to work on finding my trunk balance. However, my right arm and my right side of my body, like I mentioned, I had that brachial plexus injury. It's completely paralyzed.
Paralyzed. I
And
was
I
going to
have
say.
full function of my left arm. And I have lots of muscle mass in my left arm. So to me, it seemed like a seemingly impossible task to sit someone with this asymmetrical presentation of function on the edge of a therapy mat and telling them your physical therapy sessions from now on for the next 2, 3 months while you're in this hospital after you waking up from this coma are going to consist of you trying to find your trunk balance. And again, the bicycle, the treadmill, all this meaningful, significant therapy equipment in this hospital is not accessible to you because of your severity, because of the level of your severity, and that big old sticker we put on your forehead called complete injury. And because of that label, you're not able to access these things. So that was what I faced when I woke up from this coma, and it just lit this fire in me of this is not fair. Everyone should have a fighting chance to better their quality of life, to better their health outcomes, and to fight for regaining some functional independence, even if it's robotically, biomedically assisted independence. But that should be a possibility for everyone.
Right. You don't want to be a statistic.
Exactly. Exactly. And the pressure sore then disqualified me from being to do any therapy, even if I paid for it, outside of insurance. So it was just a multitude of things, Vinny, and that led me on this journey to go back to school, go back to Georgia Tech. I got a master's in biomedical engineering. Um, I then got another master's in kinesiology, the science of human movement, here in California, California State, LA. I'm currently in Los Angeles. I'm moving this summer back to Atlanta. I've been here for the last 6 years. And I'm currently pursuing my PhD back at Georgia Tech for the third time at Georgia Tech, in biomedical engineering, specializing in neuroengineering. And my purpose, these last 13 years, I've been utilizing technology like exoskeletons, robotic exoskeletons, to primarily focus on neuroplasticity research. How can we bring up the excitability of these interneurons that are dormant below the level of injury, to get them above motor threshold, to get them to activate, muscles in a coordinated way. And for that, we need to use neuromodulation techniques like electrical stimulation or pharmacological interventions. But at the same time, once you bring up the excitability of those interneurons below the level of injury, where the central pattern generators are located, um, you need some kind of training.
So you got to train them because
You got to train.
you stimulated the muscle. Now you woke it up.
Exactly. And the training has been brought about through exoskeletons, but not just any exoskeleton. There's many in the market, but primarily exoskeletons that are adaptive. And when I say adaptive, I mean the ability to be able to reduce the amount of robotic assistance provided by the exoskeleton, thereby creating a constraint-induced type of training environment that induces active participation, not being a passive recipient of the movement, but being an active driver of that trajectory, of that gait training and the step trajectory. So that's been my focus. But, how can I use the sensory feedback from weight bearing, and like I said, the active participation and that electrical stimulation mixed with some pharmacological interventions, and the results have been transformative. And they have allowed me to achieve those three things that I mentioned earlier: the quality of life, the functional independence, and the health outcomes, transforming my health outcomes. And it's basically translated in, I've had osteopenia in primarily my left hip, which is before osteoporosis.
Right.
I've reversed that completely. I have normal bone density now. I have much hypertrophy, the increase of muscle mass in my lower extremities. I have regulated my temperature control. I have my metabolic rates increased. I have normalized my body composition, muscle mass, fat. I've overcome basically all secondary medical complications that arise from immobility. And that's been brought about by making this neurorehabilitation part of my activities of daily living. And that's how you can maximize repetition, which, in order for neuroplasticity to be significant and optimized and meaningful, it needs to be embedded into activities of daily life, something that you repeat over and over again, and that so that training becomes automatic. Because we're trying to do all this to re-engage the automaticity of the central pattern generators in the spinal cord, the CPGs. There's historically the story of cutting a chicken's head off and the chicken still being able to run and walk without its head until obviously it bleeds to death. But that has historically informed a lot of what capabilities come from the motor cortex versus the spinal cord. And in particular for locomotion, that, along with many experiments throughout the decades, have shown that the spinal cord has the ability to learn and has been responsible for that automaticity and locomotor training. So that's what we're trying to do: engage that automaticity and use whatever connections remain through the injury site. Because even with complete spinal cord injuries, unless there's a perfect transaction, like a stab wound that cuts the spinal cord from side to side, there's always some remaining connections.
I was going to
They
say
may
some
be dormant.
activities going on.
Exactly. And that's where this combinatorial therapy approach maximizes what remains. So here are exoskeletons. I had a fabulous opportunity at Georgia Tech to walk on in an area that I named the Neurorobotic Accessibility Corridor at Georgia Tech. And I got a chance. I'm an ambassador for the company Wondercraft. I'm an ambassador for their technology. And I've been primarily focusing on two exoskeletons. I mentioned that for research, I use the adaptive exoskeleton, the one that you can reduce the amount of robotic assistance.
Hmm.
That one's fabulous um, in many, many aspects. Primarily, the ability for the ankle to be articulated. It makes the loading and the afferent input that the end user feels, it feels more natural. And the more natural the training becomes, the easier it is for the nervous system to memorize
To train, yeah,
and to
retrain.
train. And yeah, exactly. So that articulated ankle is very important. Almost all other exoskeletons in the market have a fixed ankle. Um, the other thing is this natural dip. The ability, every time that exoskeleton steps, it comes down a little bit. So it does this natural dipping motion that you experience in walking. The other thing is the ability to be hands-free, not be holding on to a walker, leaning forward, which changes your posture, but be hands-free, be able to do reciprocal arm swing, which lengthens um, the step length in the exoskeleton when you're doing reciprocal arm swing. So all these things are fabulous with this device. However, that device is only for neurorehabilitation. It's only for the clinic. It's only for a PT, a clinician, a trainer. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be a PT, but a trainer to be behind in a clinical setting. The one that I used at Georgia Tech, and that one I've used for my research, for my PhD research. I use it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here in Los Angeles at Rancho Research Institute, which is one of 14 spinal cord injury model systems in the country. This major rehabilitation hospital here in Los Angeles. And that one's been fabulous for that purpose, being able to maximize the neuroplasticity, demonstrate that there's a learning phenomenon taking place regardless of a complete injury, which, by the way, I'm now considered officially incomplete.
Incomplete.
Incomplete because I've regained sensation of bowel, bladder, and even sexual function, which are all the nerve endings that correspond to the lowest spinal segment, S5. Those are nerve endings respond to genitalia, bowel, bladder. Those were those areas correspond to it. And our theory is that with stepping, that sensory feedback comes from the bottom up. And that's primarily the area that first receives that information and is able to translate into new sensations, which is what's happened for me. And also when I step, I have this new proprioception, is this awareness of where my body is in space. By when I step, I don't have to look down at my feet anymore. I know what foot is hitting the ground when, and that translates to me being able to weight shift from side to side more efficiently. So all of my stepping, all of my metrics that we document with the exoskeletons have all been increasingly since 2021, which is when I began working with the exoskeletons. And
Do you,
back at Georgia Tech, my idea was using the personal exoskeleton, the Eve exoskeleton by Wondercraft, because Vinny, my ultimate goal is to translate and integrate into the community a personal exoskeleton that can essentially replace or become part of the wheelchair. because being able to integrate exoskeleton technology into the community, I think it's really where the most impact is going to be possible in this community.
Right. Do you think that with all this therapy, you're opening like new neural pathways? Is that even possible, or do you believe
Yeah,
because the brain,
I,
your brain is relearning how to move in a different way?
I do so. I do believe so. Um,
I mean, the body's meant to move. So if you take that ability away from it, like you said, everything degenerates. If you can keep stimulating it, just like when they rehabilitate people with stroke, when they can't talk, they have to learn how to re-speak. You know, you may have some paralysis, but you read in the brain, we only use, they say, what, a quarter of our brain.
yeah,
I guess the brain can help retrain, and
yeah.
do what it has to do.
I'm a living example of that. I was right-handed. My right arm has been paralyzed these 13 years. I've had to become left-handed. I've had to learn how to write, sign my name, do everything left-handed. I've had my basically my nerves that innervated my right chest muscle, my right pec, and my right trapezius. Those were transferred and put in my right bicep. So whenever I want to make my bicep flex, I use a robotic arm to do elbow flexion and extension exercises. And whenever I want that my right arm to flex, would I have the robotic arm on, I have to think about making my chest muscles contract.
Hmm.
And I've had to do this homunculus type of remapping uh, of my arm. And little by little, I've now been able to just think of the arm and the robotic arm responds. However, if I think of the arm and my chest muscle, um, it responds super fast, double the speed. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about because I'm experiencing that in multiple different facets of my injury and my neuro recovery. And I do think that in spinal cord injury, through these interventions, um, that is the concept of neuroplasticity, the ability for the nervous system to adapt and new connections to be made. And I do think that's possible. I mean, there's also the fact that my spinal cord got pinched really bad at T4, T5. So there is only so much that can be, readapted or connections that can be um, made. But I do think that that is a possibility. Um, and that's what we're basically experimenting. And this research that I've been involved with has been all purely exploratory research aimed at demonstrating to the field what is possible. Because early on, when I left Shepherd Center and I started knocking on doors, trying to participate in research as a subject, and also be involved in many other different ways, I kept running into that word of impossible. You can't, it's not possible, your injury is too severe, yada, yada, yada. So that's been the focus of my experience, my lived experience, my self experimentation, and my advocacy has been focused on this exploratory research to demonstrate what is possible. And it's really coming together. And Georgia Tech is really supporting me in a major way. I'm really excited about this PhD opportunity. Um, I'm already finishing my first year, um, and I can't wait for what's to come. But like I mentioned, ultimately, what I want to do is develop a way for these personal exoskeletons to be more community integrated so that when I'm at home, for example, I can get in my exoskeleton and walk around
In your house, right?
and be weight bearing, be normalizing my body temperature, my digestion, my bowel, my everything, all of my normal physiological functions to be synchronized and normalized, because that's what happens when you're up and you're moving, versus being sedentary.
Sedentary, right? Yeah, like I said, the body's meant to move. You can't keep it sedentary. If you do, things start to break down. Just like
Movement is
a
the best
car.
medicine.
You leave a
Yeah,
car sitting for a long time, things start wearing out. Even if it's not driving, then things start to break because you're not making it move.
exactly.
So you're touching on an area that's not really been, I mean, on the mainstream for people, like you said, with spinal cord, they're not doing that. It's like a new frontier. There could be a lot of positive changes going forward if you can get more implementation of this ectoskeleton type therapy to get people back moving even at some level.
Absolutely. That's the idea. And I want to ultimately change the standard of care, create a continuum with the word recovery in it, a continuum of care where individuals that are chronically injured have the opportunity to get in these devices. Now, one of the main issues is bone density. If you have osteoporosis and your bone density and you've been in a wheelchair 10, 20 years and you've never stood up, you've never used a standing frame, you've never incorporated this regular standing routine in your daily life, that's going to be the challenge, the biggest challenge. And it's my hope that when I say I want to help change the standard of care, this goes to the very beginning when patients are discharged, so that it is promoted to bear weight, to stand, to have a standing frame. Everyone that's paralyzed that has a spinal cord injury or even other neurological injuries that result in paralysis. Basically, forget about spinal cord injury. Anyone that's paralyzed should have access to a standing frame. They range from $1,000 to $10,000, and there's some that are even given away for free on Facebook Marketplace and all these random websites where people exchange and give away equipment and things. Everyone should have that, but I think there needs to be a change in the mentality because a lot of people say, well, what's that going to help me for? I don't want to waste my time, or I this or that. And it's just a different mindset because you gotta think in the long term. And there's a lot of hopelessness in, oh well, such this exoskeleton is not gonna cure my spinal cord injury and my paralysis. Yeah, you're right. You're still going to be paralyzed, but guess what? You're going to be able to have a good quality of life. Your family, the people that care for you, that are people that are around you, your caregivers, it's going to be beneficial for everyone.
Right.
Your whole
Absolutely.
ecosystem, and even your ability to stay away from hospitals, no
Right.
rehospitalizations, medical complications,
Exactly.
all of these other things. And that's why I say health, quality of life, and functional independence. Those are like my three biggest measures of success.
I mean, a lot of people that succumb to it, I mean, they bring him up, famous guy, Christopher Reeves, he succumbed to medical complications, not actually his actual injury, but the
Pressure
inability to
sore.
move.
Yeah,
But
pressure sore.
you know, with early intervention with kids and everything, the earlier you can get that going, the bigger or the better success they have to. So it's the mindset is the same, get it started right away. It's rehab. Any way you want to cut it, it's rehab. And like you said, if you can get that right away, you like you said, you're not going to maybe cure somebody, but their quality of life is going to be much better for what they have to deal with, that it will be better overall.
Their health, their independence,
Right.
all of that. And I think that's my purpose. I feel like that's why I came back. I was clinically dead for 15 minutes. I don't think I mentioned that. But
Wow.
at the scene of the accident, I was considered I didn't have a heartbeat until I was taken into the ER and hit with 2 shots of epinephrine in the heart, adrenaline. That got my heart beating, but I stayed in a coma for 3 months. And I've come to the realization that that's my newfound purpose in life. I think that's why I came back from being dead. I want to not only talk about it, not only get a PhD about it. I want to demonstrate it through my lived experience, my self-experimentation, my relentless advocacy, and thereby embody this mentality of becoming a different kind of fighter pilot, a translational biomedical kind of pilot, and be able to use these technologies, these exoskeletons, which this is the world's first self-balancing exoskeleton. It only requires a companion to be next to me, the one that I used at Georgia Tech, which is different from the Autolant, which is the one for clinical use. The Eve exoskeleton, that one does 100% of the work. It's not the best for neuroplasticity, but it's better than being in a wheelchair.
Right.
And you're still getting sensory feedback, you're still weight bearing, and you're still being an active participant because you decide where to go.
Right.
So I think one type of exoskeleton complements the other. But anyways, it's my vision, my idea to use that exoskeleton or a exoskeleton to basically walk everywhere. I would love to use this. I created a new framework for measuring functional accessibility at Georgia Tech, and I would love to be able to use that at all public institutions within the US and ultimately the world. And who knows, maybe even get a chance to go on a flight, a zero-G flight, to demonstrate functional accessibility mixed in with the ability to use these electrical stimulation devices for augmenting human performance in zero gravity environments. That's been a big passion of mine.
Might be one of those Artemis missions coming up.
Hey,
Maybe.
who knows? I'll walk on the moon with an exoskeleton.
That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, a lunar exoskeleton.
We're almost out of time. It's been great to have you on, and I guess I would love to have you back on to follow up with you because there's a lot to talk about, and we didn't have a lot of time. But I mean, you're a pioneer, and I'm glad that you got to come on the podcast. Hopefully, a lot of people will see this podcast, and we'll put links in the show notes to anything that you find pertinent that we should share with the viewers. We'll put it in there so people can check it out for themselves. But
And one last thing, Vinny, that I just want to say, my main purpose is to demonstrate that nothing is impossible when you have the freedom to dream and
right.
to act on those dreams with love, faith, and perseverance. That's the message.
Thank you so much. Ignacio, thank you for being a guest on Assistive Tech Today podcast. We'll see you guys all on the next podcast. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Vinny.